In this video, I want to discuss something that many students are uncertain about or struggle with, and that's the idea of working while being in school. So typically, this refers to doing a part-time job while being enrolled in a full-time program. This is a topic that is even more relevant now than ever, given the financial difficulties that many people are facing these days, and given that we are in an economic recession. Many students simply are forced to work during college and university because they need the income to pay their expenses. Now, of course, how your week is split between school and work can vary from program to program and job to job. It could be that you have classes on weekdays and you work on weekends, or it could be that you work during the weekdays before or after your classes. But regardless of the arrangement, the concern that students have about working during college is mainly about the time investment. The loss of, let's say, on average, 10 to 20 hours a week working, plus the prep time, commute time, and whatever else that entails. The first major concern students have is that the time spent working takes away from their time to study, and thus can hurt their learning process and by extension, the grades they receive. They can also rightly point out that not only is time lost to a part-time job during the week, but also physical energy and mental focus, as many jobs can be quite demanding of these things as well, aside from just the hours. And our constraints are inevitable. There are only 24 hours a day, only 168 hours in a week, and so your goal in balancing your schooling with your job has to be modest enough to reflect this reality. Your goal is to either maintain the same quality of learning experience that you had before, or to concede that it will be of a lower quality than before, but one that is still sufficiently high enough that it's going to keep you engaged and on top of things and performing well in your program. Given these constraints, the only thing you can control is how you choose to spend your time. Assuming that your lecture hours and job hours are predetermined, it becomes up to you to surgically carve out the rest of your week with when you should be studying. Not only are you considering the number of hours when deciding what day and time to study, but you should also be cognizant of your energy and focus levels for that day and time. For example, say on a given Tuesday you have back-to-back 4 hours of work and 4 hours of lectures. Are you the type of person that would have a better studying session after coming home and taking a break after those 8 combined hours? Or are you the type of person that would benefit from waking up earlier that day and using the time before those 8 hours to study? You know your body's clock and your motivation better than anyone else. And if you're unsure, then test out different time and days to see where you seem to be at your sharpest. And of course, easy to say, harder to do, but when you are balancing school and work, you have to sacrifice some of your more leisurely spent time. That doesn't mean to cut out all your time with friends and your exercise and whatever else you enjoy, because for sure some of that is necessary for you to stay healthy. But undoubtedly, everyone has some hours of the week where you could have been studying or doing something more productive given your school and work constraints. Another important thing to consider is the intensity levels regarding your work and school. Now, typically for the type of part-time jobs that students do, they are generally consistent in terms of intensity and input. What I mean by that is that the expectation of you at work in September is the same expected of you in December. On the other hand, a college or university semester tends to increase in intensity as it approaches the end of the term, where the majority of exams and assignments take place. How can you deal with this? Well, if your job is flexible enough to accommodate you, you could let your employer know in advance, because you should know when these exams and assignments are from the beginning of the term. That during the end of the term, you either need days off or reduced hours in order to deal with this crunch time at school. Generally speaking, your employer should know that you are a student when they hire you, and so it shouldn't come as a big shock for you to request this. But of course, it all depends on the type of job you have and whether they have the capacity to handle this request. If you can't reduce your working time during the end of the semester, and even in the case that you can, it is imperative to manage the allocation of what you do with your studying. What I mean by this is that if you have an important end-of-term assignment that you know about from the beginning of the semester, you need to begin working on it as soon as possible and incorporate working on it during your allocated study hours throughout the term. In the past, your approach may have been to start working on end-of-term assignments much closer to when they were due, and logically so, because by that point you would have a better understanding of the course materials required to complete it, and importantly, because you had the flexibility to increase the amount of time you spent studying near the end of the term. But if you are working constant hours throughout the term, you do not have that latter option anymore, and so you need to start working on end-of-term assignments or final exam studying right as early as possible. Because courses often start slow and increase in intensity as they progress, you need to take advantage of the earlier parts of the course where you have more time relative to the amount of assigned work or readings. You cannot assume that the course outline is structured in a way equally week to week that lines up with your schedule and gives you enough time near the end of the course to complete the assignments or study for the final exam. You might need to read ahead or consult other online resources and teach yourself the necessary materials in the earlier parts of the course in order for you to be able to start working on the course deliverables as soon as possible. One last thing you should consider if the work-school balance is seriously harming your student experience in terms of your learning, your grades, and anything else is that quitting your job is something that you may need to consider. Of course, this is never easy, especially for many students who are relying on the income for their expenses. But assuming that this isn't a very important and unique job to you, it will be easier for you to quit this job and obtain another one than for you to try and change your university or college program to accommodate your job. You need to first push yourself to manage your time and studying responsibly, like with some of the tips I have provided, to see if this is a necessity. But if it becomes clear that you cannot manage it, do not be afraid to quit your job. The reason I'm saying it this way, as do not be afraid, is that some students can end up feeling trapped in this arrangement, where they are struggling and doing poorly, but they feel they can't quit school and they can't quit their job either. You can. And again, I'm not saying it's easy for everyone to find another job, but you are better off doing that than ruining your semesters that you're actually paying for. One other concern that students have with working during school is not only does it take away from study time, but it also takes away from their time to do extracurricular activities. These are students that feel they need these extracurricular activities like student clubs or volunteering in order to make themselves more competitive for professional or graduate programs or internships or whatever else. So for these students, the hours spent in the part-time job are an opportunity cost of not being able to do activities that are more relevant to their career path. And it's lost because those extracurriculars are known for being able to show an interest or demonstrate a skill that employers or schools would like. Now, aside from the time management that I've already spoken about, for these students, again, it comes down to taking initiative. In the same way that you might need to read ahead in your course because the course schedule doesn't line up with your work-school balance in order to work on assignments earlier, you need to take initiative at your part-time job in order to demonstrate those same interests or set of skills that you would be engaging with in the extracurricular activity. The very fact that you would be showing these skills or interests in a part-time job is much more of an impressive feat than if you were to do it at a club or organization at school where you have the luxury of giving your time up for. Whatever extracurricular that you are going to join, find ways of showing those same skills or interests in the context of your part-time job. So, to give an example, if you were going to volunteer with some community organization for public health, and let's say you work at a Starbucks coffee shop, reach out to the ownership or the franchise head office and ask them what initiatives the company is taking for health and how you as a Starbucks employee can get involved in that initiative. And the less answers that they have for you could actually be to your advantage, because then it becomes up to you. In your emails and calls, you demonstrate your enthusiasm for taking action in the public health of the community and make proposals for what you would be volunteering to do or assist with. Even if they end up not approving your ideas, you can document what your plan was, what your process was, what you tried to accomplish, and what your shortcomings were. And even though this was a quote-unquote failure, you can talk about this experience with employers or admission committees because it demonstrates trying to achieve change in the real world, which is a lot more difficult than the straightforward nature of things like student clubs at university. The point is that you have to get creative and find ways of showing those same skills and interests of your career path within the confines of your job. Your job won't have a lot of those things by default, and you have to keep coming up with ways where you can incorporate those things, speaking to others at your job, managers, owners, whoever, until you get somewhere. So with that, I hope this video on balancing full-time college with a part-time job was useful. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this during your time at college or university, so please be sure to comment about that. And if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, it would mean a lot as well. Until next time.